When designing for the modern web, lots of emphasis is placed on creating page layouts and websites that are both standards-based and accessibility-friendly. This approach usually means creating a strong separation between content and presentation. To do this, we use CSS-based page layouts, where we use div tags to section off our content and the pure information we need to feed to our user, and separate the formatting, styling, and thematic elements into a style sheet using CSS. This will make our page flexible enough to work in a variety of mediums, not just browsers, but with screen readers such as those used by the visually impaired and alternative devices such as PDAs and mobile phones. To get started, make sure you have a new blank page open, and it's recommended that you create a new website in Expression Web to store and manage your pages. First, we'll create div tags to section off each of the important areas of our page. From the toolbox on the right, double-click to insert a new div tag. This will serve as the section for our header area, in other words, where we can put a logo, masthead, or just any important information we want to appear at the top of the page. Next, we'll create a second div right below it, where we'll store our page content and possibly a navigation menu. For this, click and drag the div tag out of the toolbox and release it right below the div we just created. To create the footer area, let's do this once more. Again, click and drag on the div tag out of the toolbox and drag it to the bottom and release it. Now for our center column, we're going to need to subdivide this into two more divs. One for the left column, or our page content, and one for the right column, which could serve as an area for a navigation menu or secondary content. Click within that div tag and just hit the enter key once. This is going to create a temporary paragraph, and it will make it a little bit easier for us to nest divs inside of this container. Click at the top of your div tag and click and drag a div inside of this div. Click below in the empty area and do the exact same thing to create a second nested div right below inside the same container. If necessary, you can click within the white space and use the backspace key to remove any extraneous paragraphs. The next step is we're going to assign each one of our div tags a unique ID selector. An ID selector is a CSS rule which is unique to a specific container on the page, usually because it contains positioning information, dimensions, or anything that should only be applied to a single container at a time. First, we'll select our topmost div, which is where our header will go, and we're going to go down to the Apply Styles task pane in the lower right-hand corner and click on New Style. In the Selector type inbox, clear out the default name and assign this the name of #header. To distinguish a selector as an ID selector, we precede the name with a # as shown here. Make sure in all cases you check off the Apply New Style to Document Selection checkbox. This saves us a step by applying the rule directly to the div right after we create it. From here, we could go through the various categories and assign properties for width, height, or positioning, but in this case, to keep it as generic as possible, I'm simply going to click OK to create the new rule. Let's do the same thing with our footer. Let's click down in the footer and select it, and once again go down to the Apply Styles task pane and click on New Style. In the Selector field, assign the name #footer. Once again, we're not going to assign any specific positioning or dimensions information just yet. Go ahead and click OK at the bottom to create the new rule and apply it. Now here we're going to do the same thing with the center div that contains our two nested divs. Selecting this may be a little bit tricky, so we're going to click as close as we can and then use the tag selector at the top and click on the first div tag that appears after the body tag. This encompasses both of the nested divs. Go down to New Style, and in the dialog box, assign this the name of #container, and click OK. Now our next step will be to assign an ID to each one of the two nested divs. Select the first of the nested divs, the topmost one, and once again click on New Style under Apply Styles. And we're going to give this the name of #right column. So under the position category, go ahead and assign this a width of 200 pixels. To make sure this aligns itself to the right of the page content box, click under the Layout category, locate the Float menu, and set it to right. Click OK. Next, select the remaining nested div, and once again click on New Style. We're going to assign this the name of #page content. Now we want to assure that no matter what size our layout turns to be, based on, of course, the browser window size, that the right column that we just worked with always floats up to the right of our page content. To do this, we're going to go down to the Box category. Under the Margin area, uncheck Same for All, and assign a right margin value of 200 pixels. This will create some space to the right of this box that always allows our right column to float up. Go ahead and click OK, and when you return to your page layout, you should see that the Page Content div floats to the left, and allows the right column div to float to the right. Now it's always a good idea to create some basic placeholders for your content. So inside the header div, I'm going to type header. Inside footer, I'm going to type footer, and inside of right column, I'm going to type right column. In your page content box, click and type the word page content here. Save your page and click the preview button above the document window. And when Internet Explorer appears, if you play with the browser window size, you'll see that our layout scales nicely regardless of the browser window size.